Welcome to the Concussion Fix Podcast, where we lift the veil on concussion recovery and empower you with real answers to real questions about persistent concussion symptoms. Each episode, you'll hear real, live Q&A sessions with real members of the Concussion Fix program, an online recovery program that has helped more than 3,000 people find relief from their persistent concussion symptoms. Guided by our experienced clinical team, Dr. Paul Hrkal, Melinda Krynen Hill, and myself, Dr. Cameron Marshall, we're here to share insights, empathy, and a clear path forward. In order to protect the privacy of the members, we have stripped away names and blurred faces. Please remember all information shared is for educational purposes only and should not replace medical advice. If you need extra support and guidance for your recovery, we encourage you to check out the Concussion Fix program by visiting concussiondoc.io or Google Concussion Fix and read some reviews and see if it's right for you. Whether you're looking for answers, hope, or just a little bit of encouragement, we're here for you. You're not alone. Recovery is possible, and it starts right here.
So happy Q&A day. This week, I actually want to share a testimonial because I just thought it was really, really fantastic. It was a teenager who was going through the program. And so I've been in contact with the dad quite often throughout their journey of recovery. And so he wrote in saying, with the help of Concussion Fix and some mental health therapy, my son is back at school and doing well. Last year, he missed over 120 days of school, and he's only missed one day so far this year. He's exercising almost every day and is getting straight A's in all of his high school classes. He will be applying to college this week. We found Concussion Fix to be an important part of this recovery, and we thank Dr. Marshall and all the people involved. You guys providing great service to individuals who are suffering from concussion and their families. We truly appreciate all the information and help Concussion Fix provided. So I really thought that was amazing words. We get a lot of questions about teens coming into the program. How can teens go through the program? And so it was really, and we always say, it's a great partnership for parents and the teen to go through it together. So I just wanted to share those very, very nice words. Otherwise, we can go over to our first question.
I just had a question about, for someone who has had back-to-back concussions within the span of, I'm not sure if the amount of time matters, but for example, within the span of 5 months, I was wondering how that recovery process would look different, if at all, or if there's anything, or if I imagine but how that affects the recovery process.
Yeah, hold on, I'm just gonna bring something up here.
I think while Dr. Marshall's finding that, I think we can just briefly say from my experience, what was the time gap again?
5 months.
Were you fully recovered from the first concussion?
No.
Yeah. And the second one was an actual concussion, or was a reactivation of symptoms?
I believe both. The second one was very impactful, so I believe even if I hadn't had the first one, I would have been concussed, if not reconcussed.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. Okay, so just my 2 cents really quickly before we turn over to Cam is that obviously if a person has ongoing symptoms, even the perception of a subconcussive event, hitting your head on a cupboard or something like that, it can re-aggravate symptoms because your body's nervous system and all the other sensory systems are in hypervigilance mode. And so that is one way that you can get a symptom aggravation. And if you aren't fully recovered, I've seen this numerous times in my clinical practice, that sometimes patients sustain a concussion and then they're trying to recover. They start, usually the first time they've ever sustained a concussion, they often are told, and they follow the advice of their primary care providers, where it's like, just rest and kind of it'll go away soon. And when it doesn't, then they start seeking care. But that to initiate that care, that usually takes sometimes a month or more. The earlier somebody does initiate care, the research shows that they have better outcomes. So I think in this case, if you haven't fully recovered, you can have an aggravation of what you're currently dealing with. But I think what Dr. Cam's about to show might be insightful for you. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. They were both like car related, so it definitely was like pretty like severe, like regardless of whether I was
Right.
whether I had the first one or not.
And almost every car accident has a huge neck component because of the whiplash that usually happens. So
Definitely the neck is involved.
it's that's massive in terms of the impact. So obviously, that needs to be a priority to recover, and hopefully we'll get a moment just to talk about where you can kind of go from here. But Dr.
Okay,
Camp,
thank
take it away.
you.
Yeah, so we do talk about this in the program, so I'm guessing you're pretty early or haven't got to this yet.
Yeah, I'm at the I just finished the nervous system part of the program.
Like the nervous system module that I do, or
Melinda?
okay. So then you would have gone through, are you in Concussion Fix 2.0 or the first version?
I think 2.0.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure this is in there, but if not, I'll just kind of highlight it again.
Okay.
So basically you understand that concussion causes this short-term kind of metabolic dysfunction, right?
Right.
So concussion, you get a stretching of the cells, which causes there's an ion exchange that happens, which causes action potentials, which is essentially just brain cells firing uncontrollably for a very short period of time. And the net result of that is basically a drop in your ATP levels, right? Is this ringing a bell now from the first kind of section?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, during this period where that ATP is low, this is where you have vulnerability. So if you do get a second concussion, that can compound and make that metabolic process last longer. Okay? But it's only during this window, right? If we look at, like, for example, this one here, a mild traumatic brain injury, which is a concussion, you have a 20% reduction in ATP, but it's a fully reversible energy deficit. The difference between mild traumatic brain injury and something like a severe traumatic brain injury is that you have about a 50% reduction in your ATP in a severe traumatic brain injury, and it's potentially permanent, where you actually get permanent damage to the cells. With concussion, you don't get that. But 2 concussions that are close together in time can create that cumulative effect, which can cause some permanent damage. Okay?
Okay.
But the question is, what's the timeline? All right. So I've shown this one before too, but basically this group here is a group that never had a concussion. So this is mice.
Mhm.
For a mouse, the recovery, if we look at this process to get back up to normal is about 5 days. So that's the recovery in a mouse. So in this particular study, they gave mice a single concussion, which is here. You can see this is a group with no concussion. Okay. And you can see there's about a 20% reduction in their ATP levels with one mild traumatic brain injury, this middle column, right? So there's about a 20% reduction there. Then you have a group with severe traumatic brain injury on the far right, and you can see that's about a 50% reduction in ATP. So in this particular study, what they did is they gave these mice a second concussion, so a second mild traumatic brain injury impact, but the only difference was the time between those impacts. So this group got their second impact at day 5. Now remember, in a mouse, concussion recovery is about 5 days, these two stars here mean that these two groups are not significantly different, meaning that if you get a concussion and you recover from a metabolic perspective, then there's no cumulative effect. It's just another concussion. Okay? But if you get that concussion in the middle of your recovery, so within 3 days of that injury, now you have a cumulative effect where these two groups are not significantly different from one another. Okay?
Okay.
So this is in mice. Now in humans, the process is the exact same. However, the timeline of recovery isn't 5 days. It's somewhere between 22 and 30 days. So 1 month.
Okay.
And usually the big problem is within the first kind of 10 to 15 days. Beyond that, that cumulative effect drops off because the brain, after a concussion, recovers within a month. So you're saying 5 months apart, there is zero additional risk to you.
Oh, okay.
That's on like a brain chemistry energetic perspective, just to make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Now, persistent concussion symptoms are defined as symptoms that happen beyond 30 days. If concussion occurs and recovery from a metabolic perspective happens within 3 to 4 weeks, that's not a primary driver of symptoms beyond that. The symptoms beyond that 30 days are the other factors we talk about. So it's autonomic dysregulation, right, which impacts brain blood flow, your breathing rates, your sleep, your anxiety, your digestion, your gut health. Okay. Number 2 is inflammation, gut health, hormones. Number 3 is visual vestibular dysfunction. Number 4 is neck dysfunction or whiplash injury, which in a car accident you're likely to have. And then
I feel
number
like
5, yeah.
For the neck injury stuff though, I feel like the window could be longer than a month. Is that correct or
Well, we're not talking about windows with that, right? So what we're
okay.
talking about here is purely from a brain injury. Like
Got
concussion injury does not damage the cells of the brain. It creates a short-term temporary energy deficit,
Yeah.
which recovers within a month. So
Okay.
if you're beyond a month,
Except for in the
concussion is recovered. Now you
yeah.
still have symptoms. Those symptoms are due to other things. Okay? Now, if you get those two injuries really close together, like within a week of each other, then you can create this cumulative effect where you do have metabolic dysfunction that can last for 3-4 months. Okay, but you're 5 months between injuries, so that wouldn't be a factor in your case. But the symptoms can get exacerbated from all sorts of stuff. For example, if the first one created some neck dysfunction that's not properly addressed, the second one will just make that worse.
Yeah.
Also, if you had autonomic dysregulation after the first injury that wasn't properly addressed, the second one is going to create more dysfunction.
Mhm.
If you have anxiety around it, it's going to get worse. So basically, persistent concussion symptoms are a reflection of your health prior to the injury. So if you had a neck injury 20 years ago in a car accident and you're fine, but then you get a concussion and now you have PCS, there's a good chance that that previous neck injury is what's driving a lot of those symptoms. Or if you had unhealthy diet, unhealthy sleep habits, pre-existing anxiety, it's likely that a concussion is going to key in on those areas, and that's going to be your driver for persistent symptoms. And so the story goes, you have a concussion, 5 months later, you get another one. Well, that first concussion may have caused all sorts of dysregulation that you're still kind of dealing with. And now we're into the concussion cliff scenario. So did you see the video on the concussion cliff?
I did.
So that is, if it wasn't a second concussion, then it's likely a concussion cliff scenario. But if it was a second concussion, it's still going to add to that concussion cliff and just make things a little bit worse for you from that.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that you're dealing with the cumulative effects of concussion. You're just dealing with the compounding effects of further dysregulating some systems. So the treatment is the same. The process is the same. You're just trying to fix those dysfunctions.
Sorry if you already covered this, but how do you say whether it's mild or severe. Like
Brain injury?
yeah.
So there's diagnostic criteria for what is mild, moderate, and severe, and I'll just pull it up here for you.
Were you diagnosed with a concussion or a severe brain injury after either one, like by any provider that you saw?
Yeah, with a concussion.
Yeah. So if it was severe, they would have diagnosed you with severe, but this is how brain injury goes.
Yeah. There's a pretty clear distinction. You'll see it here in a sec.
Okay, so this is concussion, which is also mild traumatic brain injury. This is moderate traumatic brain injury. This is severe traumatic brain injury. So things they look at are the Glasgow Coma Scale, which is kind of a series of little tests they'll do in the emergency department. If you're between 13 and 15, 15 is a full Glasgow Coma Scale, meaning you're fully alert, conscious, everything's fine. Glasgow Coma Scale between 9 and 12 is moderate, and Glasgow Coma Scale between 3 and 8 is severe. Typically, you're in a coma for some time. Post-traumatic amnesia is less than 24 hours in a mild traumatic brain injury. It's between 24 hours to 7 days in a moderate TBI, and it's greater than 7 days in a severe. Loss of consciousness is between 0 and 30 minutes for a mild traumatic brain injury, 30 minutes up to 24 hours in a moderate, and more than 24 hours of loss of consciousness in a severe. Imaging in a concussion, like MRI and stuff like that, is normal with a concussion. You might have some findings in moderate TBI, and you're definitely going to have findings with severe TBI. So if you're diagnosed with concussion, you're in the mild traumatic brain injury category. Did you have a loss of consciousness at all?
Not in the first one.
In the second?
Not, it's possible. If it was like a split second.
Right. So you're in the mild traumatic brain injury, right? If you had a severe brain injury, you would have been unconscious for more than 24 hours. Right? You're in the hospital, you're on machines and ventilators, and it's not looking good.
Okay. I just feel like some of like how like I just feel like with car stuff when there's like impact and force and stuff that's just gonna like regardless of how healthy you are before, I just feel like it's gonna impact you, you know what I mean? Um
And it can, yeah. It's not necessarily that it's only if you have pre-existing conditions that you're going to end up with PCS, but you're more likely to end up with PCS if you did have pre-existing conditions. If the accident is bad, then obviously, yeah, you can potentially develop persistent symptoms.
yeah.
The mechanism also matters in the fact that, like, was it a very traumatic experience? Because now you're dealing with the post-traumatic kind of stress that comes with that, right? And that's the difference between something like a sports injury versus something like a motor vehicle accident where it's scary. Um, and you're not expecting to get hit. Whereas if you're playing sports, you're kind of expecting that you're going to get hit, and it doesn't create that same type of trauma. So that's where the mental health component becomes so important in these types of injuries, because that is what tends to drive a lot of the symptoms and keep a lot of those symptoms around. So that's why you really want to key in on that. Okay. But concussion, regardless of the type of injury or how it happened, you're still in the mild traumatic brain injury category, which means that the brain is recovered. Now you're just dealing with the other dysfunctions that cause the same symptom profile. Maybe you have some neck issues that need to be addressed. Maybe you have some post-traumatic stress from the accident that needs to be dealt with. Maybe you have some issues with your gut, your hormones, your sleep levels, your autonomic regulation. All of these things cause that same symptom profile. So it's just trying to make sure you're tackling each of those in a very kind of systematic way and dealing with them appropriately, not skipping anything, just really doing the work to balance everything.
Have you seen like regarding the hormone part, like have you like structurally does like in a car accident, for example, does it like can that affect because it affects the pituitary gland? Like is it a structural thing sometimes the hormone piece with that like if it moves things around with the impacts?
Most often it's a functional thing where there's a change in blood flow and there's oxidative and inflammatory damage to that very sensitive part of your brain, the pituitary gland. There's this little stalk that runs down to this little bulbous gland, and that can become impacted. Now, usually there are other symptoms that a person would be having that's kind of pushing you towards that type of possibility, and then there's a referral to an endocrinologist, and then what they do is usually do an MRI of the brain. Like Dr. Marshall mentioned, concussions almost always have no findings related to concussion on their imaging, whether it's an MRI or CT scans are only done in emergency rooms. Well, the one thing that you would be looking for is there would be some sort of change in that area where the pituitary gland is, and then there's something called an empty stela syndrome, and that is basically where the MRI shows you don't have a pituitary. But these are people that have some very severe symptoms that are outside of the concussion slash whiplash realm. It sounds like to me from what you've described, and I think just for the sake of this conversation, I think because you're early in the course, the absolute best thing we can recommend is, I know it sounds like you're probably quite symptomatic, is work your way through the course, and a lot of questions that you have will be answered, and then keep checking back in with us on the actual news feed, direct message, and even better, come back again and keep asking questions here, because ultimately the if we skip to the end of, so what should you do from here, is you have to put these foundational things we're talking about in place, and ultimately also find a team to help work with you to address those underlying issues. If you don't know who that is, then the program will absolutely make that clear as you work through it. But if there was any neck issues, you absolutely will have to have that addressed, and that is probably driving a lot of symptoms for you. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
So
I
this,
appreciate
just
it.
getting back to the pituitary. So there's a couple theories on it, right? So this is the brain up here. You can't see it, but the pituitary gland hangs down, and it's in this bony kind of encasement with kind of some fascial stuff around it, right? So the idea is that if the brain moves back and forth, maybe it puts a little bit of strain on this little kind of area, right? And so maybe the pituitary dysfunction is coming as a result of trauma to the arteries that control the pituitary or go to the kind of service the pituitary. So that's one theory. But the other theory is that because concussion causes all this autonomic dysregulation, because typically we don't see these hormone issues show up until 6 months to 12 months after the injury. So a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe it's from the trauma itself, but in that case, wouldn't we expect to see dysfunction earlier on? But we don't. We don't see it till about 6 to 12 months. So like Dr. Hrkal says, typically it's a functional thing, because what happens is after the injury, we have the stress, we have the autonomic dysregulation, we start to think, oh my God, this is permanent, my brain is damaged, something's really wrong. And in that spiral, our sleep suffers, our anxiety increases, our gut gets more dysfunctional, and then all of these things start to impact our entire system, and now our hormones start to get all out of whack because of all the stress on our system.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
that's why we say just go with the program, really implement these things, because by calming things down, getting your diet right, repairing your gut, getting your sleep back on track, getting some exercise can actually fix some of these hormone issues on their own, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I need to go and get my hormones checked. And yeah, they might be all out of whack. It doesn't mean you necessarily need a replacement right away. You got to kind of do the foundational stuff first, and maybe that regulates everything to begin with, and we're not worried about it anymore. So
Mhm.
is it a result of the injury, or is it a result of the processing of the injury, or how we deal with the injury after the fact? We're not really sure. But it seems to be that these hormone dysfunctions tend to show up, 3 years after injury, 6 months after injury, 1 year after injury, right? So the studies all show it's more of a long-term dysregulation than it is an immediate dysregulation. So it kind of points more to what Dr. Hrkal's saying about just dysfunction in your system eventually cascading into hormone dysfunction.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. And I don't want to take more of your time, but I find that interesting. And just like, since the second one isn't even 6 months, or the first one, or the second one isn't even 6 months, so I would just be curious how that would affect since the hormone piece comes in often 6 to 12 months after, I would just be curious, like, how that affects or compounds or whatever, I guess.
So, but here's the thing, right? From a brain injury perspective, there's no cumulative effect. From a dysfunction perspective, maybe it adds to the dysfunctions that were already there from the first injury. That's fine. But rather than focusing on how much that back to back has impacted things, instead we should switch our focus into things that we can control.
Yeah, totally.
I can take control of this, right? You are in complete control of your recovery. It's just it's a bit of work, right? You just
Yeah,
gotta
no,
take it.
I agree. At this point, it's just what I can do moving forward. I totally agree. I just
Yeah.
You can.
Well, I think we've given you lots of food for thought there.
Thank you.
So yeah,
Appreciate
but
it.
keep come back, keep us posted, keep journeying through this with us, and we want to hear how your progress is going. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you all.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You'll get there.
All right, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this course. I feel like I only started on Monday and I'm feeling so much better. Because I have this different mindset just about it all. And I really feel like just the education and, what I'm learning, which I'm so surprised the medical field doesn't do this. It's really changed the way I'm looking at things. And if I feel something coming on, I'm not freaking out and I'm really calm about it. So I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate the, leaning into things that might cause discomfort, to try to push myself a bit. So that's been really helping. I mainly have neck pain. And so I've been dealing with some symptoms and the neck pain. I was just curious because I'm sleeping on my back, and when I turn to my side, that's when I start to get more symptoms or I feel nauseous. And I was just curious if you know why that could be.
Do you get dizzy when you turn to your side?
Not really, not dizzy, just kind of like I feel more of the head pain, which feels like it's radiating, from the neck. And then I just start to feel a bit nauseous.
So, I mean, the one thing that comes out when people start feeling nauseous or dizzy, obviously, is something like a BPPV, particularly when it's like you roll onto one side. Usually it's like more pronounced on one side. But usually it comes with like spinning, like the room will start to kind of spin or you'll feel really off when you're on that side. And it's an easy thing to treat. It's an easy thing to diagnose. And you can fix it in like one session. So, it could be that, but it's lower on my list because you're not having that kind of spinning, dizzy sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of neck, it's like that generally like some manual therapy, some soft tissue work from somebody who's really good at treating necks, is a great place to start. I love that what you said about just like changing your mindset. I mean, that's half the battle. That's the biggest battle when people come in is like, do they take what we're saying and internalize it and go, oh, okay. And then they get pumped up and then go. So that's good that you're already there, which is awesome. Yeah, I would say like manual therapy would be something that you could probably add depending on, what other symptoms you have. Like, are your symptoms still really high?
No, they're not really high. I mean, honestly, like the last couple of days, I've been feeling better just starting this. But I'd say, like sometimes I get nauseous in the morning. I have this neck pain, tightness, kind of like that pressure in the head, but it's gotten a lot less. I think like going out into social situations, I can feel it sometimes if I'm engaging, or sometimes exercise. But yeah, I'd say those are the biggest symptoms. So it's not too bad, but
Yeah, the reason I ask is because sometimes if you're like really dysregulated, doing manual therapy too early can cause things to flare up. right? If you're kind of like really on edge and really not doing well, then you don't want to go and get manual therapy at this time because it really can kind of throw you for a loop. But if you're feeling like pretty good in most situations, then you might want to consider adding manual therapy in earlier in your process. So finding a good, massage therapist, good chiropractor, something. Where are you located?
I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know anyone in New York. We get this question all the time for like New York City area, but um, yeah, you really want to find somebody who's like good at treating like headaches,
Yeah.
right? Like that's really the thing you're looking for. Like a lot of people get focused on looking for somebody that's like concussion trained. I don't think that's really as important as somebody who does manual therapy, hands-on work, soft tissue, right? So a lot of chiros, especially in the US, will just adjust. You don't want that. You want somebody who can really do some soft tissue and work on like the muscles and really work things out. Um, but um, if you go to their website and one of the main areas they focus on is headaches, the reason why they're good at treating headaches is because they're good at treating necks. And that's what you're looking for, someone who's just really good at treating headaches. And that means they're probably good manual therapists to look at your neck.
And do you know anything about craniosacral therapy?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's helpful for some, not for others. So it's just kind of trial and error. I think in your situation, given the neck issues, I would probably lean more towards something like active release therapy.
Right.
So if you go to activerelease.com,
Mm-hmm.
is that the right one? Activerelease.com. They have you go to patients and then there's a find a provider link. So I'll just put it in the chat right now for you. Because then
Okay, great.
what you can do on there is click on people in your area, then go to their website and see the conditions that they treat. And you're looking for somebody who like really highlights the headache aspect, because that means they're probably really good at treating necks.
Okay. Yeah. And I still get that kind of like, looking at a screen I can do it now pretty well, but sometimes it can kind of
And that
flare up.
can also be neck related too, because your neck tells your eyes how to move. And it could be like a visual motion issue from scrolling on a screen that's giving you these weird symptoms and headaches. And that often is related to the neck. So sometimes if you get your neck treated really well, it's two birds with one stone. You're able to do more on the screens, your headaches go down. Okay, great.
Right. Okay. Great.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, Nikki.
Yeah, we have a couple questions in the chat. Let's have them written down here. There's one member asking, I'm sleeping well now. Off and on throughout life, I've had difficult sleep issues, insomnia as a teenager, which lasted a year, then 3 kids, then concussion, only sleeping about 3 hours a night for months. But now I'm sleeping great and doing the sleep strategies. But I've often had dark circles under my eyes and still do, that I don't think are really associated with sleep, as they are always there no matter what. Can anything else cause these dark circles?
Yes. So there's a whole bunch of things that can contribute to this. Let's work through some of these really quickly. The obvious one is not getting enough sleep, but it sounds like you are currently getting enough sleep. This is more reflective of if you have a streak of a couple nights that you're not getting good enough sleep, or you're a mom with a newborn baby, something along that line. So it's definitely sleep deprivation can contribute to that. Another big one is actually one that you may have less control over, which is family history and genetics. A question I would ask is, does anybody in your family have this? Some people you just notice they just have more kind of sunken eyes, more darker eyes, more puffy eyes. Some of these things are outside of your control. Generally, things like your eyes, the skin of your lips, the color, and like how good it actually looks, or quote unquote how healthy. The same analogy can be used for smokers. Usually you can tell a smoker, if someone that's been smoking for a while, that they have kind of like a more bluish tinge to their lips and then more of an ashy color to their face. That actually is a depletion in your body's antioxidant stores. And the main one is called glutathione. So that could be another thing that could be overall reflective of your health. And so, of course, that brings up things like smoking and drug use. That's another one, but I think that's quite obvious for most people. And then the last one I'm going to say is probably one that probably doesn't get enough attention, which is allergies. And so in naturopathic medicine, I remember in medical school, we learned about what are called allergic shiners, which literally looks like you're punched in the face and you have these kind of like dark raccoon looking, darker skin and tissue under your eyes. It may or may not be puffy, and that has to do with it almost looks like blood flow is congested in that area. This can be with environmental allergies, but it can also be food allergies and sensitivities. So this is another thing to consider, that if you have a lot of these dark areas under your eyes, maybe doing some food sensitivity testing or elimination and reintroduction might be something that you can help that particular thing. So hopefully that gives you a place to start.
Yeah, it's great. And so to get those testing, who would be, I'm just trying to think,
Yep.
who would be the most ideal person to get those testings done?
Yeah, I think two people. The most common one through a primary care provider would be an allergist. So that's looking for kind of that immediate action, environmental type of allergies. So that's the IgE allergy immune system. There's a number of arms of the immune system. If we want to think about like an octopus analogy, another arm of the immune system is IgG, which is the more slow onset and slow resolution immune system. All of these immune systems are important. They all have their kind of lane. This one's a slower one, where the IgE, like the peanut anaphylactic type of allergy, that's very fast acting. And to assess the IgG food sensitivity, that's where we're starting to look at naturopathic and functional medicine doctors that can do kind of a blood draw or finger prick test, and they send off that blood for testing. And that'll tell you what you have in terms of foods. And then there's one other one called IgA, which is also tested by the same providers.
And now, because this just has me curious, and I have a question. What about sensitivities versus allergies? Would that be the
Yeah.
similar thing? Because sensitivities don't always show up on those tests, I believe. And I think you've talked about that in one of the past seminars.
I have, yes. It's a really good question, and just it's a bit of a nuance because a lot of people use those terms interchangeably, Nikki.
Hmm.
So a lot of say, I'm allergic to milk. Well, are you allergic, or are you lactose intolerant, or are you sensitive to the protein in milk? Those are actually three separate things. And so there's actually three kind of different solutions. If you're lactose intolerant, that's not an immune reactivity at all. That means that you just can't break it down. So sometimes you're intolerant to certain things. Other examples are things like fructans. These are little things, little molecules that are found in certain fruits and vegetables and legumes, and they can cause a lot of gas and bloating, but that's not an allergic response. Most people have heard of what are called FODMAP foods, and these are little fermentable sugars, oligosaccharides. That's what FODMAP stands for, and that's, again, you can't break it down. That's not an allergy. That's just an inability for your gut microbiome to properly metabolize that. It causes gas and bloating. And then finally, sensitivities are an immune reactivity to a food protein. So this is a really important distinction. One of them is fast acting, that is the IgE, and then that's considered an allergy. And then the sensitivity is the IgG, slow acting one. So there's three different things. Intolerance, we already talked about that right away. And then there's the fast acting allergy. That's the allergist looking at that. And then there's the slow acting sensitivity. Two of them use the immune system, the allergy and the sensitivity, and one of them is just kind of an intolerance.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that helps. Um, Very thorough answer. Thank you. Next question in the chat is for Melinda. How do I not fall asleep during mindfulness and meditation practices? Or is it okay to fall asleep during guided meditations? Is the subconscious still absorbing the information and the connections?
Sure, that's a common question. I think it's a good one because sometimes the relaxed voice in practices or even just a soothing voice can just really make us feel sleepy. There's a couple things. The first is reminding yourself of a posture that helps you be alert but comfortable. So oftentimes, if we're just like leaning back in our chair and trying to practice mindfulness, we're going to get more sleepy. So what I guide us through in the regulating your nervous system and through some of the mindfulness lessons is to remember to sit upright, sitting, on the edge of your chair, feet planted firmly against the ground. in order to, keep a posture that's going to help promote alertness. The other thing is choosing a time of day in which it will support you to stay more awake. So if you're not a morning person, don't meditate in the morning because you're probably going to feel sleepy. So finding a time of day in which you feel more alert is going to be helpful when you're choosing a mindfulness practice. Um, Under the mindfulness lesson, I actually go through an entire, checklist of reasons why choosing our posture, location, timing for the practice is so important in order to prevent things like sleepiness or falling asleep. So there's that piece you can check out under the mindfulness lesson. Now, that being said, there are other reasons that we tend to fall asleep or zone out during a practice. And sometimes that's because it's a really sensitive area of our body. It could be an area that's in pain. So a common one for people with concussion is they might kind of forget the practice or feel like they fell asleep once a practice might be inviting you to look inward to focus on your shoulders or your neck or your head. And that's just your body's way of saying, I'm not ready to receive this information. It's still too sensitive of a place for me. I can't go there. So something to keep in mind if you've already tried all of the sort of posture, timing, and space aspects of building a mindfulness practice, that sometimes our bodies just, our mind-body connection has a way of telling us when something is still unsettled or we're not feeling safe to go there. So that's also a possibility. And the last thing I'll say, again, this is all in the mindfulness lesson, but the last thing I'll say is movement paired with mindfulness can sometimes be really helpful if you're prone to feeling sleepy. So starting with things like mindful walking or mindful movements to support that state of mind, that sort of present moment focus before trying a seated practice can be helpful.
Great. So those are our questions for today. I feel like it's between time change and maybe people staying up late to watch the baseball games
World
this
Series.
week. Yeah, it's a quiet day today.
That's okay.
Yeah. Here's a nice comment I just want to read out. Thank you for all the important work. I really appreciate it and feel so lucky to have found you. Thank you. That's great.
Is there, Melinda, Cam, anything that you guys are seeing in practice or anything that's kind of exciting recently, since we have a couple minutes here that that you'd like to share?
No, do you?
Well,
We just had our article released. I know members who are in the program. I mean, you're already in the program, you know about us and everything, but I think sharing that, if you want to share that, Dr. Hrkal, that's
sure.
exciting.
Yeah. So we recently were interviewed by Post Media, which is at least here in Toronto, it's the mother company that kind of runs a number of media outlets. One of them being the National Post. And so we basically spoke about the program. We spoke about what we're doing in terms of kind of, I'm going to use the word disrupting the conventional concussion kind of care model. And so everyone in the program is well versed with this, but we're hoping to kind of spread the word a little bit more because we ultimately, we've said this before, we really believe the work that we're doing is absolutely life-changing for so many people. And it's so easy to access at home. I'm not saying the work that we ask people to do is easy. It's more so just something that anybody anywhere could start applying. And it would be great if they knew the things that we teach in the Concussion Fix program as they're working with their healthcare providers, not instead, but as a foundation. So we're just really out there trying to spread the word, and that's why we really appreciate any sort of reviews or any sort of positive feedback. Nikki's already posted the links how to do that there. So yeah, that's something that we're really excited about. We're also working on launching very shortly the kind of membership perks section of our program, and we're going to start off with some of the supplements that we talked about. I did a presentation a couple weeks ago to introduce that. We're just finalizing some web things, and we should have that launched early in November, which is coming up in the next couple weeks. So that's kind of what's on my plate. I can answer the question that you posted here. Question about lion's mane while you do that, Cam. Someone who they met had a brain injury and success with it. So lion's mane is a mushroom. We do talk about it in the nootropics live presentation that I did in the course. It's kind of claim to fame is that it helps improve the growth of new neurons. And so some people with many different types of neurological conditions and nerve damage have found it helpful before. It is not part of our kind of core supplement recommendations or things that we cover in the course. There is, as I've spoken about it, there is some absolute things that might be applicable, but there isn't enough research in concussion per se. But that doesn't mean that it's not applicable in PCS. So I do think it's worth looking into and speaking to your supplement literate healthcare provider if that's right for you. I think it's got an excellent safety profile, and I think it does have some benefit. But the last thing I'll say about it is this: like with some of the other supplements in the course, there are a lot of things out there that you could, in theory, take. They might have some sort of piece of evidence and applicability to concussions. When we start getting down that line of all these different brain boosting nutrients, it's my clinical experience, regardless of what the research says, is that it's very hit and miss which one actually will work for you. The core foundation supplements that we have in our program are ones that I think are really helpful on many different fronts. Their safety profile is excellent, and the research body of evidence is the strongest. But really, in terms of is it going to be the cure-all magic bullet for you, that is highly subjective and individualized. So I can't promise that this is like the best thing for everyone that has PCS, but it's worth a try.
All right, why don't we go to as he raised his hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to first off say thank you. Appreciate you guys. I had a snowmobile accident 2 years ago or so. In a race, I hit my head. Kind of got all the concussion symptoms. Like your typical concussion symptoms. Went to some rehab and whatnot for a couple months, and then I was back to normal. And then flash forward 2 years later. I was dealing with a toddler trying to get out of her crib, and so I ended up like sleeping on an air mattress for about a month or so with her, trying to get her back to sleeping regularly. And then all of a sudden, all my concussion symptoms just came back. Difficulty driving, hard to anxiety. I'd never had anxiety previously, and then all of a sudden it all came back, and it was just really hard to figure out. And I finally made some strides after going through your program. So I appreciate that. I do think most of my stuff was from the neck, and I kept getting a ton of going to 3 or 4 different chiropractors, and I finally found one that seemed to work about the same time that I was doing with you guys. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm on the right path, but I'm very close to getting kind of back to normal. But I'm still dealing with like some anxiety, and I think it's mostly due to the neck and visually, so it's more sensory. I'm just wondering if it's all coming from the neck, like if the anxiety comes all from the neck, because like I said, never had the anxiety beforehand, and now it's probably my main symptom.
I think that anxiety can be related to neck dysfunction, and I think it's related to potentially some like autonomic dysregulation, just because the neck is involved in the autonomic nervous system. But anxiety is so multifactorial that I don't think we can say that it's only the neck, right? There's a whole bunch of things that go into it. So I'll pass it to Melinda to kind of highlight that.
Yeah, I think it can be helpful to try to figure that out, right? So you can make more sense of your anxiety. So we can think of anxiety as just being a feeling in the body, that restlessness, or sometimes there's a racing heart or sweaty palms, shortness of breath. Sometimes it feels very physical. Other times we can really connect anxiety to like running thoughts in our head, or ruminative thoughts about, oh my gosh, is this going to happen to me again? Are my symptoms going to come back? So there could be, different thoughts, emotions, and body sensations associated with anxiety. So that might be the first thing to sort of explore for yourself is how does your anxiety show up?
Yeah, it's more of like a physical. Like I work in a big I'm in an office, but I do have like a warehouse in the back, and so it'd be like the bright lights. When I would go and talk to people, I would, basically had this like, hey, I might faint or something like that, so the legs would get weak and whatnot. However, every time that I would have neck work done to me, all those symptoms would get less and less and less. And then, let's say I went a week or two without some manual therapy, then it would start to come back. So it was like very, very, very closely tied with neck, with manual therapy and whatnot. And then looking at the video, I noticed that he said that getting an iron neck would be a good thing. So I actually went out and bought one of those. And 2 days after using that iron neck, I actually went out and I pretty like the anxiety almost all went away, like the visual anxiety, because most of my anxiety comes from like visual things, so just kind of sensory. So it's just really tough to figure out what it is, but it's just so much of my anxiety symptoms come from basically when the neck is not kind of working properly.
Sorry, I think that's a big component of when symptoms come on, especially like visual symptoms. It basically signals to your autonomic nervous system that like something's wrong, and that can cause that to kind of go into kind of fight or flight, which is going to be associated with anxiety. So I think that there is a component there. Is like by getting rid of the other symptoms, oftentimes anxiety will subside. So it's, again, we're back to the holistic kind of thing, right? Is anxiety potentially a standalone? Potentially. Is it related to the onset of other symptoms? Potentially. But either way, we have to kind of look at it from a holistic lens and address each component, right?
Yeah, the nervous system can kind of get stuck in like a defensive mode, right? Oh no, if symptoms come on, that means I'm not safe. That means I might feel more impaired, and anxiety, learns to show up at the same time. So sometimes it's sort of like learning or working on strategies to help separate those two. So I can have symptoms and still remind myself that I'm safe and I'm not, under threat. And I can have anxiety and isolation without necessarily having symptoms. So sometimes there's some strategies you can work on to separate the two. So it's this term called decentering I use a lot in the program, because what happens when they are very interconnected is that our symptoms can actually show up in a more heightened form than they would if we were able to step outside of the anxiety. So I think there's still a little bit of work for you to do there in the sense of piecing out how anxiety is interrelated with your symptoms, and how if you can separate out anxiety and not have that necessarily um, immediate anxiety response with the onset of symptoms, you might actually be able to sort of work through what the symptoms are all about in the first place. So that's all covered in the recovery mindset lesson. And just really validating that that is such a common occurrence. And it's just a sense of like our nervous system interweaving these messages of safety and feeling unsafe when symptoms show up. So there's sort of like these mental exercises you can work on to help you say like, even if I have symptoms, I can still take a breath. I can still feel grounded. I'm still safe in my body. Then we're not necessarily adding that layer of stress and worry and anxiety to symptoms when they arise. So that's kind of where I would go with that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great. Maybe we can just end with one more here from the chat. Dr. Marshall suggests I not use noise canceling headphones for noise sensitivity. What about musician earplugs where it just reduces sound? Also, how to be able to handle music when someone is talking.
So I don't recommend any type of, band-aid approach. And what I mean by that is like it's an avoidance strategy, right? You want to be able to kind of tolerate normal everyday things. So I would rather you not have any type of implement and try to gradually increase your tolerance. We also want to try and address the systems that cause some of these sensitivities, right? The systems that cause these sensitivities, autonomic issues, inflammation, and also anxiety. So I think we'd have a better approach is to actually handle those dysfunctions which will reduce our sensitivity, while we also increase our exposure, which will reduce our sensitivity. Because if we go around the world trying to suppress the environment around us, we actually get more sensitive over time. So you want to try and actually fix the problem, not just mask the symptom, right? It's the same thing with like painkillers. It's like, oh, you have headaches every day? Okay, well, just take a Tylenol every day. That tends to cause more problems, right? Instead, let's fix the root underlying cause. So I tend not to recommend that. That being said, if you're in a situation which you're not ready for yet, but you have to do it, then you can do something like that. So in the long run, you want to be fixing the system so you can tolerate everyday things. But if there's something like I have an event that I have to go to that I can't get out of, I'm not ready for it yet because I haven't done the work yet, but I need to try and do what I can to try and make it through this event, sure, you can do something like that. Like, for example, binasal occlusion glasses when going on a road trip. Something like that. It's like, okay, I have to travel for 2 hours to go to my family's for Christmas. I'm worried about all the people there. I've just started the program, so I haven't had time to really do much. Can I use these tools in the short term? And the answer is yes. But you don't want that to be your long-term strategy because it's going to just keep it around for longer than it needs to be. All right. So hopefully that answers your question.
And I'll just chime in of, I had a very love-hate relationship with you guys when you told me I couldn't wear mine anymore. I was very upset, but I trusted the process. And honestly, it took a couple of weeks to be able to start tolerating all the sounds and noises again. Because I used to live with sunglasses and my kids' ear protectors, like those big ones for the little kids. And I wore them in the house, I wore them outside, I wore them everywhere. And so when I ditched them, it was scary. But honestly, the best decision I've ever made, because I could see how quickly, and then going through Melinda's section, and taking it seriously when I went through Melinda's section the second time around, is when like those shifts started happening. So it can be scary to kind of ditch them because there are security blankets, but they're totally worth it. But I always had them with me in those situations when I had to go to the grocery store and the noise and the light and, just sensory overload was starting to get too much, or I had to go and do stuff that wasn't preventable. I had them, and then but I wouldn't start with them on either. So I'd start with nothing on, and then, halfway through my grocery trip, if, I would check in with myself, and if my symptoms started to increase to a 3 points, okay, I would throw everything on, cash out, and leave as soon as I could. Things like that. So, taking them off is great.
We always talk about having an out, right? So even like when you talk about like return to driving, you don't just want to jump behind the wheel and decide that you're going to go on a 2-hour road trip by yourself to see if you can handle driving, right? What you want to do is you want to put a passenger beside you, and you want to try starting with like shorter drives so that in the event something comes up where you feel like, your anxiety level is going or your symptoms are starting to creep up, you can pull over and let the passenger take over. That's your out. Now, if you want to go to an event, don't start with the earplugs in. Put them in your pocket. Go to the event and gradually increase the amount of time you can spend at these events before you have to then rely on them. But knowing that you have them if you need them may just give you the confidence to just do more and more and more. So yeah, keep it as an out for sure. Carry them with you if you want. But I would really strongly suggest that you don't use them unless absolutely needed.
Yeah, it's all forms of exposure therapy, right? We have to gradually build ourselves up to stimuli that feels overwhelming, right? It makes our body feel unsafe. That's why we start using sunglasses in the first place. We start using noise canceling headphones because we want to feel safe. We don't want to feel so overwhelmed. So the more gradual you can sort of wean off of those, the more likely it is that those symptoms will go away. That being said, we don't want to lean into that more avoidant realm when we just sort of keep them on because we feel good. As Dr. Cam mentioned, that ends up backfiring in the long term. It's a tough one. It's really tough because you can feel so overwhelmed and so anxious and so worried about, what's going to happen to me if these symptoms show up. Sort of the same as the last question. We need to start learning that the symptoms aren't the enemy, right? They're not actually going to, do damage. It's just that sense of how can I gradually work up so my nervous system is supported and those symptoms don't constantly rise to the surface every time I leave the house or whatever triggers it is for the symptoms you have. So it is a big
Have
thing.
all been very helpful because that would be good. Because what I'm doing is if I go out with family or whatever, there's 10 of them. Even with the earphones, I'll have a crash the next day for like 15 hours where I can't function. And I'm almost getting to the point thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't be going anywhere because I seem to be able to manage pretty well if I'm just going for a walk or, I don't know, spending an hour with people. But anything more, I seem to crash, and I'm trying to not crash. So, yeah, that's helpful. I'm just wondering also with music if I should be, what type of music to listen to try to get back into handling music or how, like, I guess it's gradual. So maybe 10 minutes and then I guess it's like everything, try to expand it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about finding your threshold. Like, so hanging out with people, because what you don't want to do, like the fact that if you crash for 15 hours the next day, that means you went way over your window of tolerance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You did too much. So you know that 10 people for an extended period of time is too much. So then what you may want to consider doing is like, okay, if it's any more than 5, I'm not going. And if it's 5 or less, I'm going to limit myself to an hour, hour and a half, whatever my threshold is. Once you find out what that number is, then you can gradually increase it over time. So I don't want you to not do anything because it'll actually get worse. But you want to do enough that it's challenging, but not a 15-hour setback to the next day. And the same thing goes for music, right? Try 15 minutes by yourself with no other stimulation. Okay, how does that feel? You could even just lie down and just listen to music for 15 minutes. Does that do anything to provoke symptoms? If not, let's try half an hour. Let's try an hour. Find out what your threshold is. And then you want to just take it slightly less than that threshold. Do that for a week or two, and then try to increase the time again to figure out what your new threshold is. And your new threshold will be much more. Then you slightly reduce it, and you do that for a few weeks, and then you challenge it again. And eventually you get to a point where you can listen to music all day with no issue, right? And it's the same thing with the crowds and the people, right? Okay, 10 people for 2 hours is too much. Let's try 5 people for 2 hours. If that's also too much, let's try 5 people for 1 hour. Oh, I seem to be okay with that. Great.
Hey, that's really good, and it would. But the only trouble is, my family is 10 people, so they always meet together, and so I have to not meet with them. Every time I do have a big crash after, but I
But
I
but
hate to be
that's
away from my
potentially
family.
that's just potentially holding you back, right?
Okay,
Because it's like if you think about like your autonomic system as a bit of a wall,
yeah,
right? What you're doing is you're trying to punch through the wall and it's punching you back and you're now way back here. So you want to try and make progress. And if you're having these setbacks every time you do this, it's preventing you from actually improving. So 10 people, if that's the minimum you can do, that's okay, but let's find the time that you can do without having a crash. Maybe it starts at only 20 minutes. You pop in, you say hi, sorry guys, I'm just trying this out, and gradually increase the amount of time that you can spend there.
there's another problem in that. Since then, my eyes have gotten a lot better in it for driving. Like I'm driving, I can drive now 10 minutes. I couldn't drive for a year. But so I have to go with family to go to the event. And so, of
Right.
course, they're staying. They're leaving early because of me, but they'll stay
Right.
for 4 hours. It's usually for a dinner or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are all
That one's
These are
more,
all
yeah, that one's more
challenges.
about like adjusting your expectations. The expectation I'm hearing for being with your family is that you have to stay the whole time. So maybe that sense of trying on, like, can I just go for 10 minutes, excuse myself for an hour, and then go back for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then work with that ratio. Okay, next time I go 15 minutes, then I step out for 45 minutes, then I go back for 15 minutes. It may not look the way you want it or the way your family might expect you to show up, but if you can gradually, work through that exposure so that your body feels safe in that environment, then your symptoms, will decrease. But I'm hearing it's hard with a big family and the way people get together. You can't necessarily control all those variables, but what you can control is how long you stay there. I think that's the point Dr. Kim was making as well.
Yeah, like could you try to organize it closer to your house where you could walk there and then you don't need the family to drive you? Could you organize for an Uber to take you to and from so that you don't have to rely on family to have to leave early as well? Like you just have to think of some kind of creative solutions, and this is not forever. This is just as you build up that tolerance so that you can go and do something and not have this huge crash the next day. And once you find out what that limit is, then you just gradually push it, right? Maybe each time you go, you spend an additional 10 minutes, right? So you're not blowing through your threshold, you're just challenging it slightly, right? And then eventually you're there for a couple hours, and then eventually you can stay the whole time and no
Yeah.
issue, right? That's really what you're trying to figure out is what can I do to give me that, you know, kind of limited exposure without the huge setback.
Okay, that's all good. Yeah, that's what I'll need to try. The Just one other problem that happens is that the family wants me to be well, and so when I go, then they're all freaking. So, and then they're all freaking, if I said I had to take an Uber, they go, "Oh no, you don't have to. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
want you to do that. We'll have to drive you." And
yeah,
everybody freaks
yeah.
as soon as and then, I mean, that's, I guess, just trying to set a boundary, but it is hard because they all freak out a bit.
Well, they're concerned, right? They want the old you back. They want to make sure that you're okay, and I think that's just how family is. And that's good. You sounds like you have a very supportive, loving, caring family. Um, but I think that maybe if you just like explain this prior, just say, "Look, I just want to try something."
Hmm.
Right? And I need to be able to just kind of have your support in trying this. And then maybe they won't freak. Maybe they'll kind of side with you on it and help you along.
Okay, thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
try those things.
Yeah, you're welcome. The other thing too, like I mean, I just mentioned this too, like if you're meeting at a restaurant, obviously you can't do this, but if you're meeting at somebody's house, could you find somewhere where you can just like excuse yourself to just kind of shut down for a half hour while you reset and then come back? Right? That's another potential way that you can play this.
Hmm. I have been doing that when I'm there. Like I do take, because I can't take it, but I think maybe I have to take more of those. Like what I'm doing is taking one in the 4 hours, and oh, it's bad when I'm leaving. Like I can hardly talk. I
Mm.
can't think. My sister asked me a question, and I just, uh, uh, yeah, it's quite bad. So I have to do it more, as you say, and then I'm going to try that idea of bringing the headphones, and then I like, um, yeah, just trying it very small. Try 10 minutes, then put them on, and just try to handle it that way.
Yeah, or even like let's say, you hang out for 30 minutes and then you go and take a 15-minute break and then you come back for another 30 minutes and then you take a 15-minute break. Rather than only one break, you're just maybe breaking it up a little bit more, just keeping that reserve, replenishing rather than kind of burning it out completely.
Okay. All right, I'll try
Yeah.
those.
You're going to have to get a little bit creative here to try and figure out the way to do this, but once you kind of find that, then you can gradually increase that exposure. And I think that, in not too long of a time, you'll be able to do it all.
Okay, and not tell them. geez, I'm not going to see you for 6 months.
No, don't do that, because that goes the opposite way, because then your capacity gets lower than it currently is.
Okay.
Right? So you want to still maintain that. That's really good. That's therapeutic. Right? Being involved in conversations and having to listen to multiple people, and that's good. That's your treatment. That's your rehab. We want you to do that. But we don't want you to go and overdo it, right? Like, the idea is like training for a marathon. So maybe hanging out for 4 hours with 10 people in your family is a marathon, right? But if you wanted to run a marathon, you couldn't just not train and go run a marathon, right? You'd have to start small, right? You might start with running 1 kilometer a couple times a week, and then maybe you increase that to 2 kilometers after a few weeks, and then you increase it to 3 or 4 or 5, and eventually you can get up to a point where you're in a good enough shape to run a marathon. So you have to think of this 4-hour stint as your marathon. What is the 1 kilometer that you can start with right now? Right? Like, I'm never going to be able to run a marathon by not running, right? You're never going to be able to hang out with 10 people for 4 hours by not hanging out with people, right?
That puts it
Okay.
into perspective.
Right. So that's your marathon. You don't have to run it all in one shot, but eventually you can do it. You just have to find what your 1 kilometer is for now. And then you're 2, and then you're 3, and then you're 5, and then you're 10, and then
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Great. Good spot to wrap it up. A lot of great questions, a lot of great conversation. So thank you, everyone. Otherwise, hope everyone has a fantastic week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Fix podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful and that it gave you a little more clarity, hope, and confidence on your road to recovery. Remember, every step you take matters, no matter how small it may seem. If you feel that you could use a little more support on your healing journey, check out the Concussion Fix program. Just visit concussiondoc.io or simply type Concussion Fix into Google and read some of the reviews from people who've already walked this path. With over 3,000 success stories and an average symptom reduction of nearly 50% in just the first few weeks, it might just be the help you need to break through. Thank you again for listening. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone you think could benefit, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a session. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay curious, and continuously remind yourself that recovery is possible.